Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode. I'm back with another 21 and Sensory podcast, and today I have special guest Nick Ransom, who is joining me. Nick works as a freelance television researcher and digital video producer, and I'm really excited to have him on. So Nick, did you want to do a little introduction, a bit of background to you?
Yes, hello. I'm Nick. I'm a TV researcher based in Manchester in England. And yeah, I've been in the industry for about 3 years now. And I was diagnosed with autism whilst at university, which was about coming on 4 years now. So yeah, I think ever since that's happened, that's been a great blessing in disguise, really. So yeah, it's great to be on your podcast today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. That was a very good introduction. Let's start with the sort of autism diagnosis, and then we'll kind of chat more about your work, I think. Was it sort of something that came out of the blue, or was it something you were slightly aware of growing up, that you might have had some sort of issues?
Yeah, it was a funny one, really, because yeah, I'd kind of made it through my teenage years, and yeah, it certainly wasn't the smoothest, but it got to kind of the end of my teenage years, and I'd always kind of had problems with my parents, in the sense that I was always very resistant to change, or if something went wrong, like my printer broke or my laptop broke, I'd be distraught. And yeah, I kind of sensed something maybe was a little bit off, but I didn't quite pick up on it until the end of my teenage years, where my parents and I were kind of continually falling out over mostly my fault, or 99% of the time my fault, of just kind of being either too sensitive to things, or just kind of acting up and being, kind of letting my anxieties out on them, should we say. So it got to the stage where, my mum went to her GP, and she essentially said, "What's wrong with my son?" but in a kind of nice way. And the GP said to her, "Oh, right, from what you tell me, it sounds like it might be autism or Asperger's, maybe look into it, see what he thinks." And yeah, my mum came home and told me this, and I was a bit like, right, okay, I'll try not to be offended by all this. I'll go with it. But no, I kind of rejected the idea straight off, and I was like, yeah, that doesn't sound like me. Yeah, I'm not disabled. Leave me alone, kind of thing. And then a few months later, I was at a festival, and it was a case where I was with quite a few different people, and there was obviously music and lots of people around, and I felt like that day a switch was kind of off inside me, or something wasn't quite adding up. So I remember driving home that day, and I was thinking, what could possibly have made this day so much more challenging than it should have been? And I kind of thought back to that conversation with my mum, and it was a case where yes, maybe there's some truth in this. So I got through the door and did my research, and I kind of went from 0 to 100 as we do, and kind of was like, all right, we need to get this diagnosis now. And so I went back to university. I spoke to my GP, and they kind of sent me off. And I was very lucky, and I know how privileged I am to have this, but I was seen within about 6 months, and I was diagnosed after a little 2-hour consultation. So I remember that day being one of the greatest days of my life. It was blue skies. I remember it being a very cold sort of day in Chester, where I went, and it was the beginning of a total shift in my life of newfound kind of self-acceptance, and I just knew much more about myself, and I was able to research and connect with different people, and I think especially in the industry I've now gone on to work in, autistic people and neurodiverse people generally are very underrepresented. So I think it's important that we speak out about it, and I love doing things like this on podcasts, and everyone I've spoken to in my industry are very keen and open to hearing about it. So that's great news, really. But that was the diagnosis, as it were.
Wow, that's really interesting. Really interesting to hear how it kind of stemmed from your mum kind of taking it upon herself almost to kind of go to the GP, because I was wondering, like, how you kind of first approached like the doctors, but I guess it was nice in a way that your mum did it, and then you could kind of do it.
It was a really strange sort of period. It's funny, like that's how I remember it, I think, but it probably was slightly different to that, in the sense that it just caught. I don't really remember having that conversation with my mum initially about, oh, you might have autism. That's just what I remember as happening. But yeah, I can't remember much more than that, other than, you know, just a continual battle between my parents to try and make sense of things. Because, you know, I think when I was at home and growing up and being at school, you know, I'd be absolutely fine during the school day, or and I'd be fine academically, and then I'd get home and, yeah, I just let all my stress out on them, unfortunately, which they did incredibly well to put up with. And I think the only thing that my mum said to me, you know, after my diagnosis was, "I wish I'd known earlier, because it would have made our lives all so much easier." But no, they're genuinely so chuffed that I've managed to, you know, work things out, and, you know, I'm now living the life that I want to live in the industry that I want to be in. So, so yeah, I mean, all credit goes to them for putting up with me for 20 years, and then kind of pushing me in the right direction. Yeah.
Because that's exactly how I feel about, like, my parents as well. Like, my mum after the assessment was like, you know, if, you know, why did it take so long for us to find out? Was there something I could have done? And my assessor was just like, well, no. And it's just, you know, your parents having to, like, put up with, you know, just having a child who's just a bit different. So I can definitely relate to how you feel. Yeah,
I think it's yeah, I mean, autistic parents, I think, are the unsung heroes, as it were, and you know, we're a very challenging bunch. Not from our, you know, it's not a fault, is it, that this has happened? But yeah, I think they deserve all the credit in the world, really. But yeah, I was lucky to have my mum who kind of spotted something amiss, and yeah, went to the GP. Yeah,
it's really interesting. And so, what year of uni were you in? Your first or second year when you?
Yeah, I was in my second year. So I remember going to university being the most, well, traumatic is probably a bit strong, but yeah, most challenging period of my life, in the sense I was about to, you know, I'd lived in the same house for, you know, 18, 19 years, and I was now going to have to live and, you know, go and live on my own, essentially, and work out things for myself. And I chose Manchester for some reason. I grew up in the south of England, kind of in the on the Surrey-Berkshire border. And yeah, it was a case where I was like, "Ooh, can I really do this? Go and live with, you know, loads of other, you know, teenagers, and be on my own in a totally different city." And yeah, I remember that night before, and that day when I left, I was distraught. You know, it was like my whole life was just totally being changed. And yeah, the first term was tough, but yeah, it was the second year I got diagnosed. So I think the first year I learned quite a lot about the fact that, you know, I'm not a big fan of large social gatherings. I'm not a fan of, you know, noise, and that kind of sensory situation was really heightened, really, in that first year of university, whether it was people shouting in the corridor, or whether it was things going on outside, or just, you know, just the total change of lifestyle, I guess, that totally kind of threw me. And it was a challenging first year, but, you know, academically and in terms of the university, I did absolutely fine, and, you know, I settled in well to kind of the academic studies of things and getting my essays done. You know, I enjoyed I was studying TV and radio, I should say, unsurprisingly. But yeah, so yeah, it was only the second year when I think it was the summer of, or maybe my mum actually spoke to me kind of at the end of the first year, and then I went to this festival just before the second year during the summer, and then. Yeah, it was February 2017 that I was diagnosed. As autistic. So yeah, it was kind of middle of my time at university, because it was a 3-year course.
And did you sort of go back to university and sort of tell people about your diagnosis initially? Like, were your university sort of helpful, or did you decide to kind of keep that private?
Yeah, no, I did. I remember the what was that? The psychologist saying that, you know, you should share this with the university, because it, you know, will give you extra support. And it actually really helped in terms of explaining to lecturers why I was a certain way. I mean, again, as we all know, we can mask, you know, people on the autism spectrum can mask it rather well, depending on your needs. But yeah, it was a case where I ended up saying to my I think it was the head of the course or something, that this is how I've been diagnosed. And I'd had a few, not fallouts, but disagreements, shall we say, with a few lecturers over their teaching styles. I was a little bit honest, and it didn't go down very well, I remember, with one lecturer. So yeah, I think it helped explain a lot of things, and if anything, you know, it was embraced, and I felt more like myself as time went on. So yeah, it was a very strange sort of period to happen whilst I was at university. But I mean, the University of Salford, where I went at Media City, were just great in terms of, you know, I was given kind of directed towards counselling, and, you know, lots of different well-being support. So yeah, I can't fault the university in terms of supporting me, and I think generally there needs to be more support for autistic and neurodiverse people generally in society, not just universities. But I think when they found out and when I told them, they were very very helpful.
Oh, that's great. That's really good to hear. I mean, it sounds kind of from start to finish like it was quite a positive sort of thing, your diagnosis, because I know, not everyone has such a kind of positive outlook, and, potentially having a label and stuff like that can be quite sort of distressing. But it sounds like you went through like the process and you've come out kind of being potentially sort of kinder to yourself and understanding your needs and stuff like that more.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think even just in the last few months, I've been trying to focus a bit more on loving myself and not kind of being too critical, because I'm a very critical person of myself, and I think that's because I want to to be the best I can, and I've got high standards for myself. But university, it was good. It was a success. I mean, I was very lucky to get a first, and my final project that I did was a radio documentary on somebody who was autistic, actually, and that was something that was a great way to finish off my time at university, was to explore a story that I love and kind of tell myself through someone else, if that makes sense. So it was a great 3 years, and then I'd met somebody at the end of kind of my time at university, and I kind of needed somewhere to stay in Manchester, so I moved moved in with them, which was kind of at the end, just after I graduated.
Okay, so you're still living there now?
Yeah, well, we've moved flat since, but yeah, I'm still in Manchester in the centre. Yeah.
Oh wow! I mean, just the fact that for any child leaving or young adult leaving for university, that's a huge thing. But for someone who is autistic, I know you didn't realise at the time, but that was a huge thing to do, to move out of somewhere you've lived all your life and to have to live with students who can be slightly nightmarish and very social creatures.
Challenging. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I think had I been diagnosed earlier at the age of 8, which was really young, like many people are, I think I would have been held back slightly, and I might have not been as ambitious, and I might have said, right, because I was thinking about going to Portsmouth University, and that would have been a bit closer to home, and I wouldn't come up to Manchester, where a lot of the media industry is now. So I might have played it a bit too safe, really, and so actually not knowing about my struggles probably pushed me in the right direction. I certainly wouldn't be where I am today, I don't think, if I'd known I was autistic, early on in life, because people, you would. It's difficult to say, but I think people will naturally say, "Oh, maybe best if you do that," and just naturally out of kind of care for you, oh, maybe you should do that. So if anything, I just kind of battled on, and I'm lucky to have now been able to cope in a city 200 miles from home, and so I think you've got to be very careful about telling young people that they're different and that they can't do things. But it's a delicate balance, I guess, isn't it?
Exactly. I think I get exactly what you're saying. That's such a different outlook to have, to be, actually I've probably gone further than I would if I had that sort of diagnosis. But you're right in a way, because if I'd known sort of younger, I think there would have been some sort of limitations, and they might have said, well, Emily, that you're shooting a bit too high there in terms of it's university, or trying to get this job. But you're right, in not knowing, you just keep pushing and trying.
100%. Yeah.
What sort of age did you get into television and radio? Because I've kind of trawled all over your website in the least stalkerish way possible.
That's good. It's an extra one on the count.
And I saw it's kind of from like an early age you were quite sort of fascinated by sort of cameras and like filming yourself. So was that something that you've always kind of been leaning towards, like job wise? Yeah,
100%. I mean, it was a case where I was about probably 8 or 9, or for as long as I can remember, really. I remember being, watching TV and thinking, oh, that's fascinating. I wonder how that happened, or I wonder how they did that. And I remember walking around with a little microphone when I was younger, kind of, I don't know, interviewing my parents, or, something, just kind of constantly recording if as soon as I could get my hands on something that would record something. And it was kind of about age let me think. Yeah, I would have been about 12 when I did an interview at school, which is on my website. And it was a case where they asked you, what do you want to be when you're older? And at this point, I was all very interested in the role of a presenter on screen. A lot of people like this, and I was like, I want to be a TV presenter, which I think was kind of, the only face I really saw on TV. You only see the presenters really, don't you? So I was like, that's quite cool. And I was always somebody who could, I'd like to think, talk, quite well. And so I kind of put that as my dream. And age 12, I kind of said that on camera, which was a little interview we did at the end of year 6, I think it was. And then, I was, I'd got little cameras for my birthday and for, Christmas. And, I'd just be taking, initially it was photos that I was kind of, I did a lot of photography, and then it kind of evolved into the world of video. And I recorded a lot of stuff, and as time went on, I kind of, tried different types of editing software that was, free on the internet, and was uploading to YouTube. And I think it was about 2009, I started my own YouTube channel and a little web show. And I did this with some of my friends at school. And we just go out and film, what was now probably total rubbish, but, we'd be playing little silly games, or, doing little sketches or whatever. And that went on YouTube. And that was kind of the first time where I kind of published my work. And kind of until about 2013, I did, various different sort of shows on YouTube and different little channels and stuff. And that was kind of my life. And the second show I did, or the second channel I set up, was kind of designed as a kind of TV channel for teenagers. So we called it Teen TV. Mm-hmm. And I went out in the community, and I mean, looking back, it's not really stuff that kids should, are probably interested in. But we interviewed like bell ringers, and we went to like village fetes and all those kind of things that I could in my little village. And I kind of interviewed people and stuck a microphone in the face of people and said, what do you think? And I was like my own little mini journalist, I guess, out on the road. And just kind of got it online, and it was a great way of kind of learning, firstly, the technical skills of, editing and filmmaking, but also, socializing and trying to, because I think, obviously I was very awkward when I was younger, and my social skills probably weren't as natural as some people. And then, being out on the road and, actually using my obsession of filmmaking, helped kind of develop my social skills, I guess. And so, by the time I got to about 2013, I'd done quite a few hundred videos on YouTube, some of which are still there, which I don't look back at often, I'll be honest. But and then it kind of came to about 2014, I think it was, where I started volunteering with a local charity, or it's actually a foundation. They support different charities. And it was with this lady who I'd met actually at one of the village fetes, and we're still great friends today now. She's called Cheryl, and she runs the Lisa May Foundation, and very small charity. It's literally just her, and she needed somebody to help kind of make videos, or basically improve the digital side of their foundation, and give them some additional web support. So I kind of made some videos, kind of showcasing what they're all about, and that was the start of a kind of friendship, which still continues to this day. But we did, until I went to university. We spent all summers and time off together filming for this charity, and just filming different events that they were doing. So it was a real, I was really lucky to meet Cheryl, and again, without her, I don't know where I would have turned up. But so I think volunteering is something that really helped.
Mm-hmm. And if anyone's interested, the videos on your website are really good. So your website is nickransom.co.uk. So I'll put it in the show description.
Thanks. We'll get a few more views.
No, it was really good. And I saw all your teen TV stuff, and you were interviewing vicars and mayors and stuff. It was really good.
It was funny watching back.
Is it almost like a time capsule for you to look back and be like, that was a section of my life?
It's funny looking back now. I'm obviously older, and I, nowadays I do things totally differently. But just the fact that I was out there, making stuff, I think, and I say that to anyone who comes to me these days and says, I want to be in your industry and I want to make TV or whatever, and I'm like, well, the first thing you can do, cameras, are relatively cheap these days to the extent, or you can film on your phone, or it's so easy to shoot these days, so that you can get almost anything out there. But then I think, the way I've benefited from, watching a lot of TV and watching a lot of content, and kind of, scrutinizing the detail of how things are put together, and that's really something I think that's benefited me as a kind of observational kind of eye when you're watching or listening to programs. So yeah, being able to kind of, and it's probably a slight autistic trait in just kind of copying and masking, as it were, and kind of making do with what you see around you. And so yeah, it's I think probably skills that help me in both my personal life and my professional life, is kind of copying but also learning and then developing it yourself, if you get me.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting as well to have that late diagnosis and look back on things and think, oh, that's probably a kind of an autistic thing, or having that perspective and just thinking, oh, actually, that's probably it's probably a trait. But if it's if it's working for you in a positive way, then I think it's only a good thing.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's it. I mean, I think I'm, I look back now and I think I'm so lucky to have known what I wanted to do from such a young age. And there's, I remember being at school and people were like, oh, I'm not sure what I want to do. And I was like, gosh, I'm so blessed to be able to know that this is my obsession, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm going to put my heart and soul into. And videoing and filmmaking kind of, was at the forefront of my young life. I wasn't somebody to go out with friends that much. I said do bits with filming with them occasionally, but no, I had like one friend when I was at school, really, and yeah, it was just kind of my whole focus. So for it to now have evolved into the career I've got is great, and I'm very lucky to have it, really. Yeah.
That's great. And how did you, so kind of jumping forward from university, how did you get your sort of first job within the industry?
Yeah, so I left university. Yeah, I'd continued to do a bit more volunteering. So yeah, I'd done bits of filming for different businesses now, because the lady at the charity had kind of introduced me to some of her business friends, and I'd done sort of videos for them, and I was starting to get paid for my work now, and that was great. So I was starting to meet clients essentially and start making stuff and getting paid for it, which was amazing. And then I kind of did my time at university, and I think it was my third year of university. It kind of hit home that if I want to be in the TV industry, I can't just keep filming my own stuff with businesses and stuff. I need to start meeting people in the industry and kind of evolve from a video production freelance kind of world to the television world. And yeah, in that final year of university, I was like, right, this is my time now to start making contacts and meet people. So I kind of, as I do, I went all out to try and meet people and and kind of go to events and get a sense of who the main players were in Manchester. And yeah, it was a good final year in the sense that I made a few contacts. And then when I left university and graduated, it was a case where like I was now in a flat in Manchester, and I was on universal credit, and I was all trying to make do. And then the first job I actually got was at BBC Children in Need, which was a incredible experience. I'd had about 4 months of looking, and I've been up to Glasgow for a few different things, and I wanted to stay in Manchester, but this social media assistant role at Children in Need came up, and I was pretty knackered of all the searching by this point. I was like, oh, I've searched for every single job, and I've got turned down so many times. And then I applied for this social media role at Children in Need, which was working on their social media accounts during the 2018 appeal. And I went for an interview, and I was blown away when I got the phone call to say I had got it. And a very emotional day to have finally made it into the BBC, which was, I think, when I was younger, I could have only dreamed of, really. So I did that for about 3 months, and as is the way in this industry, you get a few months and then you kind of start again and look for another job. And I went to Children Need Rocks at Wembley Arena and filmed some stuff there. And worked on a duck race sweepstake that we were doing. So all just loads of daft stuff to do with fundraising. And I think the reason I got it was probably because I'd volunteered with a charity, and I'd kind of shown that I've got an interest in kind of obviously helping people and also filmmaking and digital media. So that was 3 months, and that took me to the end of 2018. And then by that point, I was in the BBC and much more able to kind of move around and apply for internal jobs, which is kind of how it works. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So once you kind of get your foot in the door a bit, like once you get kind of networking, and I know like everyone says it's all about who you know, but it really is.
Yeah, and that's the challenge, I think, for an autistic person, really, is that you can't really just apply on merit, and you can't. Well, I mean, there are obviously some jobs where and you will always get a job, dependent on what you can do. But a lot of it is meeting people. I mean, this one at Children Need, I'll be honest, was one where I applied for it on the website and had my interview and got it. But the one I had after that, so my next contract was at Radio Manchester, and whilst I was at Children Need, I kind of been speaking to a few people at Radio Manchester, and I ended up meeting, I think, the assistant editor. And then I think a few days before that Christmas, so once I'd left Children Need, I got a phone call from the editor who said, well, we need somebody to do social media for us, or social media, videos out in the field for our website. Sorry, not our website, for Facebook and, and social media. So, yeah, I was blown away where, it was like the best Christmas present ever. I was like, right, great. I've got work in January and things are starting to, take shape now. So, yeah, I did that for 3 months, and that was one where, I was out in the field interviewing people and kind of doing what I did when I was younger, really, which was, out there filming stories and capturing things. And I was actually filming things in portrait at this point, which was a kind of new BBC standard, which was very strange. So I filmed things on my phone and edited it, and it all went out on the Facebook page, which was quite a big audience that the BBC has, obviously. So that was very cool, very cool.
Oh wow, it's really interesting to hear how all the experience you've built up, even the voluntary roles have really led to where you are today, and given you that really strong foundation of just building up all these skills in video production as well as producing as well. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how it all comes together, and I think life becomes so much easier when you've done it for a long time, and there's just small things that you think, oh yes, I remember 7 years ago I did something a bit like that, and you can kind of work it out. But it all comes down to experience. And I think when I say to people that I've been making content since, and that was my big selling point really when I was applying for jobs, I've been making content since the age of 13 or whatever, it's a great way just to feel more comfortable at doing what you do. And so, as I say, to anyone who wants to do something similar, I just say make content on just film stuff and be experimental in the world that you want to do. So I was at Radio Manchester, and then I moved to A Question of Sport, which is my first kind of TV experience. And I was a runner on that, which was it's kind of the baseline, kind of entry role, where you're kind of helping out, and we got a lot of responsibility on that program, where I was able to go out and film with sports stars, and I was in the studio helping out, and so that was great. And then I moved to Bitesize in the education department, so that was kind of working on the website. And then when the pandemic hit, I was moved to the Bitesize Daily Educational Service Programme, which I think is just about to come back actually on BBC Two next week. So I helped I was VC research on that. And so, I should say it was my first researcher credit at Bitesize. So I think I was so stunned to have moved up so quickly, really. Most people are runners for maybe 2 or 3 years perhaps. And obviously I'd done, a lot of entry level roles, but I'd only been a runner really on A Question of Sport and doing a few sort of days here and there for other companies outside. But so I was a researcher, and that is kind of really the place to be, because you've got a bit of responsibility, but you're not really, you're not in the forefront of leading the show, are you? So that was until about July, when, we were in the midst of the pandemic, and I was helping out on that. And then it was a case where, the BBC, understandably have got to be, really careful with their money. And I think that naturally filtered down to the bottom of the chain, where perhaps there were less entry-level roles. And, it's very difficult to find roles regardless at the BBC. There's very few runner and researcher roles advertised on their website. So, it came to July, and I was, it wasn't anyone's fault or anything. It was just naturally no more work came up. And, there was a recruitment freeze at the BBC. So I had to basically go, right, okay, I've kind of been written out the script here. Let's go and find other companies to work for. And since then, I've gone to work for kind of independent companies who still produce content for the BBC and Channel 4 and all the main broadcasters, but they're independent companies. So that's kind of, I'd like to think a quick overview. Hopefully that was a quick overview of what I've been doing. Yeah.
Wow. That's really interesting. I'm trying to think of my next question, because there's so much to unpick there. So how are you finding it sort of present day now with the pandemic? How is it affecting what you're doing right now?
A lot of the industry has been been kind of wiped out, by the fact that broadcasters are spending less, and therefore there's less work for people. But for me, I mean, in 2020, I was relatively lucky. As I say, I left Bitesize in July, and then kind of August and September was kind of spent, trying to find work outside the BBC. So I think when I left, I was like, oh, okay, my contacts are fairly strong outside the BBC. And then I kind of was out and went, okay, maybe they're not as strong as I thought. And it was a case where, I spent 2 months emailing people left, right, and centre and saying, I've worked for the BBC for 2 years. This is what I'm all about. And it got to September, and I was introduced to a company. I came across a company, probably whilst I was at the BBC, but they're called Studio Lambert. They produce things like Gogglebox and The Circle and Race Across the World and loads of different things. But they said to me, we're making a new series of Naked Attraction. Do you want to work on this programme? Which is quite X-rated, I should say. So I won't give you too many details. But I luckily was out on location doing the dates. So after they've played a little game, shall we say, in the studio, then they go out on a date and they see each other with clothes on, shall we say. So I was responsible for helping out on that, and all the COVID protocols, which are so important now in the industry. And so that was kind of my first kind of job outside of the BBC. And then I did a few days here and there at other companies on small kind of documentaries. And then it got to, I think, probably about October. Yeah, it was after my birthday in October where I managed to get a role with a company called Purple, who are fairly new, and they produce kind of factual entertainment programs. And so I did, I think, 7 weeks on a documentary around T-Bay Services, which is a motorway service station on the M6, which I think when I initially heard, I was like, right, a service station, let me try and get my head around this. But actually it was, so T-Bay Services are on the M6, they're in Cumbria, they're kind of on the edge of the Lake District, and essentially they're a family-run business. So most service stations are, kind of owned by corporates and all this. But this is, a service station that's very unique, very sort of, fancy and it was great. So I wasn't out on location on that, but I was kind of helping out from home, kind of organise things, and so that was a great one. And then from that, I then landed the role which I've got now, which is on a documentary again for Channel. That was both for Channel 4, these two, and they so the production manager who kind of oversees the logistics and the budgets and kind of runs the the day-to-day health and safety logistics of a program. Their partner worked in telly at a company in Manchester, or who were filming in Manchester, and so I was invited onto that, and so the current program I'm on, sorry, it's not filmed in Manchester, it's actually filmed in Birmingham, or the West Midlands, I should say. And this is around, young people essentially. And it's kind of a school kind of documentary series around, how they're facing the pandemic and what it's like. And it's in an area called Dudley, which is kind of so it's kind of around Wolverhampton. And it's an area which has gone through a lot of change, and very diverse sort of area. So there's lots of stories there, and so I think it's supposed to be 6 parts, and it's going to air this year sometime. And so we're kind of interviewing children and filming them at school, and then filming them at home when they're not in school because of COVID. So that's kind of what I'm on now, and it's been great. I've loved every second, really.
Wow, it's so interesting to hear the kind of mix of things you've been working on, and how, I don't know, you're actively having to constantly be kind of on it in terms of searching for a job.
Yeah, it's what surprises me is the amount that you've got to email people in this industry, and I'm sure when this contract comes to an end in February that I'll be back on my emails and trying to land my next role. But I think that's the thing that you've got to do, is constantly be on top of your contacts and saying, oh look, I'm now available, and something just tends to turn up unbelievably. And so it's been a very strong 2020 really, and I'm lucky to have found work when there's been so many people out of work because of the industry, because of the pandemic. So and we're lucky that TV can carry on, because there's obviously lots of industries, hospitality, etc., that can't continue because of the pandemic. And we have obviously all of our rules in place to prevent any transmission as best we can. But it's been a very strange year, but one that I'm very lucky to have had, really.
Yeah, it sounds like you've done some amazing things, and getting credits here and there, like researcher and stuff like that. That's great. and it all adds to your CV at the end of the day.
Of course, yeah. It's it's always evolving. I've never updated my CV so much in my life. Literally every few months, you're just constantly, moving it on.
Sounds like maybe every day is a bit different for you, or maybe every month is a bit different for you. How do you cope, kind of autism wise, in terms of change?
Yeah. It's the change and stuff. Yeah, it's a tough one because I think in my domestic life. So personally, when I'm I've got time off, any sort of change or stuff like that really stresses me out, I think. But actually, when I'm in work, the idea of changing contracts and going different places and whatever and working different days of the week just doesn't faze me at all. I think it's because my priority and my obsession is making telly. So any sort of chaos that comes around it, I just deal with very well, surprisingly. And then, in my personal life, if plans change or a friend pulls out or something like that, or even something changes in the flat or something like that, I'll get quite annoyed. I think it's probably because there's less pressure, I guess, and therefore it's probably less pressure. Oh, sorry, more pressure in the workplace. So I kind of like, right, this is supposed to be hard. This is supposed to be, stressful. And so I kind of naturally take it in my stride, maybe. And then when I'm at home, when there's kind of no pressure for life to be stressful, I kind of get more stressed, which I guess is maybe an autistic way, yeah.
I mean, I get what you mean. Your job is your passion, basically. And the fact that you can deal with change within that just shows how committed you are and how, involved you are in that passion. But I'm totally with you on the whole kind of on a personal level. It's the little things that kind of can wind you up.
Trip you up, yeah. You're right. I mean, like the other week, so I've been, this contract I'm on now on this documentary at this school. It was the first one where I've really been out on location, and I've been confined to working from home now, but when, kind of during December, I was out on location a lot. And there was, quite a few occasions in December where I was having to kind of come back and forth to Manchester. And I'd obviously be packing bags and making sure I've got everything. And that's probably the most stressful thing, is making sure that you're prepared enough for when you're away. And so, writing a list and trying to just, keep life moving along during all the chaos is sometimes, a little stressful. So, but I think you learn to deal with it, and I'm so I look forward to being out on location and meeting the team or doing my job. That it just doesn't really become that big an issue. You just kind of put up with it because it's so much fun, and it's honestly a dream come true in the sense that this program I'm making now and the efforts I'm going to now to kind of help with the editing of the program and kind of just helping with the whole organization of things is so satisfying. I think when you see it on TV and when it comes around, I think it's going to be kind of September time, I'm guessing, this program. That it's when you see your name come up, and it's just like there's no feeling like it. It's just incredible to see your name roll up, to knowing that potentially millions of people out there watching it and enjoying what you've made is just it's crazy. Yeah,
that's huge. I mean, how exciting to see your name in the credits. Like, I can only imagine how exciting that is.
Yeah, it's very surreal.
How have you found, as you've been going between freelance and contract jobs, how have you found people react to kind of neurodiversity? And have you come into contact with other like autistic people working in the industry? Is there much of a diverse range of people you're coming into contact with?
There's a few. I think I've probably come across maybe. Well, I mean, I've probably come across maybe at least 3 or 4 autistic people that I can think of off the top of my head, and we do exist in the industry. It's not just me, but I think there definitely needs to be more, and because it's an industry that relies so much on social interaction and networking, naturally it discriminates people of our ability, I guess. So it's a tricky one, but I mean, when I'm moving between contracts, the main challenge for me, I guess, is time off. Like, I love being busy. Like, if I've got an empty day in the diary, that's quite painful for me, because it feels like I've failed, but it feels like, oh, I should be doing something, and I'm somebody that gets bored very easily when I've got time off. So it's that time off where between contracts is the most painful, because obviously you've got no money coming in, and you're thinking, right, okay, I've now got to play it a bit more safe in terms of financially, and you're like, why is no one responding to my emails? They said this contract would be happening, and they've not got back to me, or all these things. So it becomes most stressful when I'm out of work. But when I'm in work and, you're making a show and there's such logic to TV that, this is how things are done. And obviously things change and things go wrong all the time, but, you naturally, there's a process for dealing with them. So I'm not saying working in the industry is easy, but I'm saying for me, I can deal with it better because I know there's usually a solution to everything, or there's an option, or this is just how we'll have to do it. Whereas in life outside, it's just I think that the time off and the fact you're sat in your house trying to find work and you've got to sort of organise your own life, and organise your day and organise how you're going to find work. It becomes I think a bit more pressure on you, and therefore becomes a bit more stressful. And because for now, I mean, I just perform my job really. Whereas when I'm out of work, it's right, I've got to find a job and I'm on my own and this is down to me kind of thing. So that's kind of the transition that I face. But as I say, most of the time it's usually a few weeks between things where you'll be emailing a week and then something might come up and then it doesn't happen and then the following day you get something. So sometimes it's just waiting for the right moment really. But
I can definitely relate to what you're saying about sort of time off or just like having time out. I mean, I know when I have a day off or a day where I don't need to do any work, I just not having that structure and routine of knowing what I'm doing, it just kind of leaves you in the lurch a bit. And just knowing, you'll be working for this amount of set time ahead of you is nice to know.
Yeah. And even like weekends, like it's just nice to have some sort of structure about things. And especially at the moment during the pandemic when there's literally nothing you can do apart from sit in your house and maybe go for a walk, it's quite like, oh gosh, now what do I do? So I think it's just learning. I think learning about yourself is the most critical thing. And I've got a little, I've been writing a diary since like April, I think. So when the pandemic started, there was obviously quite an intense time. And I thought, I'm going to write a journal entry every day on my phone. And so I have done on this little app I've kind of got. So I think you just find other ways around it. And so you've got to, and that's where I can kind of reflect on how things are going or why I'm struggling or what I need to do better. And so self-development I think is critical. I think when you're autistic or when you're neurodiverse and kind of learn and generally really, I mean, I say to anyone whether they're neurodiverse or not, the more you know about yourself, the better you'll be, because the better you'll be able to adapt to life and challenges and put things in place to be able to change things. So that's quite important.
I know you're quite an advocate in terms of kind of diversity and creating a kind of equal workplace. Is there any accommodations or support that you think people who are neurodiverse or have hidden disabilities might benefit from, or that the industry could be more aware of?
I think it's hugely important. I mean, I know when I was at the BBC, there was, and there still is today, a lot of effort going into making sure that interviews are kind of neurodiverse friendly. So, this whole thing of reasonable adjustments is something that kind of comes up a lot. But what is a reasonable adjustment? There's still quite a lot of questions over it. But I think there's talk about interviews potentially being done even just walking around the building or walking outside and just getting to know people and it being less formal. So I think even in the highest office or highest broadcaster in the land, that there are efforts to change things. But I think it's not just the big companies that need to change. It's also the smaller companies. And obviously you're asked in regards to, do you have a disability that may affect your ability to carry out this work and all this? And you can say yes, but then I think that the best thing, the thing that stands out to me from my 3 years in the industry so far was when I joined Bitesize in the education department at the BBC. And it was, forget the organisation, it was somebody that came to me and said, I see that you've got autism, or I read that you have autism. How can I help? What's the best way that I can help you work? And I thought that was just the most fantastic way of approaching things and saying, right, I don't quite know all the ins and outs of autism, but how can I put you first, kind of thing. So that was, and I think I'd like to see more of that. And so and even the other day when I was out on location, somebody said quite nervously, Nick, I read you've got autism. Is there something? Oh no, it just kind of said, can you tell me more about it? And I was like, I can tell he was nervous asking that question. And he was like, have I asked that the right way? And I was like, literally, don't panic, because the fact you've asked is great, because it's allowing me to kind of talk to you about it and educate you about it. And so yeah, I think honestly, people just need to ask questions and not be afraid to approach the subject. Because for me, I'm just like, I'm happy to tell you everything about it. I mean, there'll obviously be some people who are a little bit more, still get to know themselves. But yeah, I think I don't feel afraid to ask people about it because, even if you just say, "How can I help?" That's the best way, I think, of approaching it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And just being able to have an open conversation with a colleague is quite nice.
Yeah.
And like you say, just being asked, specifically for you, because we are all so different. What could help you in terms of, if someone asked me that and I was working in an open plan office, I'd be able to give them a big list of things. But just being asked is not as, it's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that, well, actually, yeah, when I was, and I actually took them up on it in the end because initially I was like, no, I'm fine, but I really, really appreciate you asking. And then I was moved desk, and I don't know what it was. It just threw me slightly, and I was a bit like, and because it's hot desking at the BBC, where you're supposed to move about. For me, it was just an extra challenge of visually seeing something different every day, and it just added an extra stress I didn't need. And so I said to them, "Is there any chance that I could have my own desk?" And they all had a big think about it, and I was thinking they're going to come back and say, "No, this is the BBC policy," or something like that. And incredibly, the lady who was in charge of the department said, "Oh yeah, no, that's fine." And what they did is they put a little note on the desk that said, "Oh, this is Nick's desk," and I was like, "Fabulous!" And yeah, it was. So I mean, that's obviously in the BBC, which is obviously a very unique environment. But I think there just needs to be a, how can we help you? Because these aren't big, usually they're not very big things we're asking about. I mean, we're not asking them to, do a whole change around and refurbishment of the office and do a whole feng shui thing. We're asking them to, usually just, like open a window or shut the window or, turn off that noise or, something like that. So it shouldn't be that big a deal, really. So yeah, I think, and that's why I kind of, the more we talk about it and the more we, educate people about neurodiversity, then the easier life will become because everyone will understand each other better. Really, it's not that tricky, really. I don't think.
And like you say, we're not asking for the world. It is, I think, the word reasonable adjustments or accommodations. It sounds like we need our own office, which would be great.
It would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Ideally, we're not asking for the world. We're asking for a desk that is just ours or something like that, which is, it's little in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I mean, bigger picture. I mean, and what people don't seem to recognise perhaps is that if you make that reasonable adjustment, you can have somebody who's absolutely on fire with their work. And like for me, I mean, so I'd like to think one of my main strengths is kind of video editing, and so I'm quite, well, even just being on the computer generally, I'd like to think I'm quite fast on the keys and the mouse and stuff. So yeah, I think when you put somebody in their position where they're comfortable, they're naturally going to obviously do better at their work. And so, or autistic people and neurodiverse people have such talents available to them because of their obsession or their interest or something that means actually if you put them in the right environment, they will absolutely, work harder than anyone else. They'll stay late and, you'll get so much more and you'll actually reap the benefits of it. So I think it's so worthwhile, making the effort. I really do.
Yeah, exactly. You'll get, better work output and a happier employee generally. So nothing really to lose, is there?
No, exactly.
So why don't you mention where people can find you online? Because we've mentioned your website, but I didn't know if there were other kind of links you wanted to mention. Yeah,
I mean, the website's kind of main place. Yeah, nickransom.co.uk. That's RAN with an N, SOM. With an M, because people always write that the wrong way around, .co.uk. And yes, I'm on Twitter as well, Mr. Nick Ransom. But yeah, so that's kind of, my work life. But yeah, I mean, my website's usually the main place to go, for all my work related stuff, yeah.
Okay, that's good. And so you've got this contract that you're doing now until February, is that what you're doing?
Yeah, that's till February. So yeah, I'm on this Channel 4 documentary around school in Dudley in the West Midlands until the end of February. So that's kind of my focus now. But yeah, and what's been great is over the last few years, a lot of my employers have said, if something's come up or there's been somebody's, a charity's got in touch and asked me to speak to their autistic kids or something, I'll try and make the effort to do it because I know the benefits of having some, when I was younger, if somebody come in and said, oh, I'm like this and this is what I've achieved, it can really help. So yeah, I think yeah, I try and make the effort when I can, and obviously I try not to take the mick with my employers, but and they've been very, very lovely in accommodating at these various events that I often get asked to. So yeah, but as I say, I think autistically and work wise, it's not a massive issue for me. I think it's something I can sort of deal with rather well. It's more in my domestic life where things go a bit more downhill. Yeah.
Well, definitely, it sounds like, just from talking to you for this past hour, that you've really found your calling and your passion in life, and that you're putting all your effort and your enthusiasm into it, which it's so great to hear. And to hear that you had a autism diagnosis, even though it was late in life, it was kind of turned around in 6 months, which is great to hear, because usually it's a lot longer. Yeah. And just to hear that people have been supporting you throughout your work life is really refreshing to hear, because it's not something, unfortunately, I always hear on this podcast.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think for me, like, I may have presented the perfect life here, but it's recognized. It's just perspective, I think. And for me, like, so I struggle with kind of OCD a lot around my relationship, and I think they call it relationship OCD, but it comes down to, like, okay, that's a problem I'm facing right now, but when you think about it, the bigger picture, like that's just one area of my life. And actually, over Christmas, I made a little pie chart of all the things which kind of make up my life, and kind of helps put things in perspective. So if you're worrying about one thing, or you're obsessing about one thought, then actually you can go, right, well, hold on a sec, this is only one part of my life. Let's go and do something else. Let's go and do some work, or let's go for a walk, or let's speak to my family, or something like that. So I think, yeah, it's just perspective. I think everything is perspective, and I think especially when you're autistic or you've got OCD, it's getting a perspective on just your life and what I'm actually seeing, and trying to keep perspective is just my biggest challenge, really. That's all I try and do every day. Yeah,
it's difficult, isn't it? Because, like you say, work and personal life, you try and kind of keep them separate, and coming home and stuff like that, or like being at home and working from home at the same time, like, stuff kind of feels a bit more merged now than it ever had sort of before. Yeah. So, like you say, keeping that perspective and knowing when to take yourself off for a walk, or just to get some headspace is really useful.
Yeah, and I think obviously during the pandemic, like, I've been working from home a lot, and it's strange when your partner's sort of in the same room as you when you're working, and can create a little bit more intensity in the flat. But actually, I think it's trying to recognise at the moment that we're in totally, and it's the word, isn't it, unprecedented. We're in unprecedented times, and this will end at some point, and life will resort to some new normality soon. So I think it's if you're struggling with something at the moment, maybe question, is this a result of the pandemic that I'm facing? Will this be a lifelong thing? So I think it's just. Yeah, and that's why writing things down helps, because you work things out quite quickly, I think, when you write stuff down, and you can kind of see, oh, right, that's happened because that's happened. And so I mean, my 2 bits of advice is write stuff down, and kind of consider whether your stress or anxiety is due to the pandemic. And it's just trying to get as much perspective as you can. That's what I say.
Well, I think we'll end on that note. We'll end on your advice. Thank you very much for joining me and giving up some of your Saturday to talk to me. Very kind of you, and it's been really interesting to hear your entire journey from childhood right the way till now. So thank you very much.
Thanks. It's been great. I mean, I'm very impressed with obviously all you do on your Instagram, and it's great to be being on your podcast. So wishing you all and all your listeners a great 2021.
Thank you. Likewise with you. I'll definitely be looking out for that documentary.
Thanks very much. Bye.